Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is Wednesday, the 3rd of November. I just want to say thank you ever so much for tuning in. It is the prodigious, the prominent Professor Johnson at PNG. We're coming back more authoritarian Christianity ways, how to live influential through our law. We'll do more for God today than he did yesterday. So tomorrow I'll do more for God tomorrow than I'll do today. Hallelujah. Praise God. In mind, in spirit, in heart, and soul, you'll receive his holy gift of progressive progression if you all work hard at it. Methodically hard at it, day in, day out. Thank you all for coming through today. We're on the Tabernacle, day 12. I'm pretty sure we've read this in previous days, previous weeks, but we're going to go over it again. Tabernacle, day 12, Exodus chapter 25, verse 9. Make this tabernacle and all its furnishings exactly like the pattern I will show you. When God dwelt with his people in ancient times, they believed that he moved around with them in a large tent, which was constantly at the center of their society. The reality that he truly did, because he told them so many centuries later. This filmy tabernacle was placed by a magnificent temple enriched with perfectly cut stones, overlaid with gold and sweet smelling cheddar wood. It was so much easier to believe that God really did live there, that God was tabernacling with his people. Sadly, the temple was destroyed, first by the Babylonians and later by the Romans. Amazingly, God then took a step even closer to use us than simply being a rigid structure amongst his people. He came to live within all who invite him. God living in us, that can't be true, but it can. The Gospel of John reminds us the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us, tabernacled with us. We have seen his glory, the glory of one and only Son, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. In reality, God, who previously tabernacled with his people in a tent and temple, is now willing and able to live within all believers. We can have God living in us, thanks to the Holy Spirit, who can make it a reality. You only have to ask. Hallelujah. Praise God, ladies and gents. I'm always following religiously with more authoritarian ways to show that I am purity within God's great divine. Thank you all for tuning in, everyone. Really appreciate people coming through, supporting the show time and time again. We've got a lot ahead on the agenda. So much on the agenda. We're looking at the COP26. Let's have a think before we move forward. You know, we can look at, Bible. The word for the Bible, man, is the destroyer of the world. Population growth, industrialization, pollution, using our natural resources running out. What can we do? Can we put a stop to women giving birth, or stop to letting people come in our country? That's what I thought Brexit was all forming. It was forming Brexit to stop immigration. That's what I strongly believed. Obviously, they're putting tougher restrictions on it, but not tough enough, it seems. We need to stop population growth. But England always seemed to make it accountable to save others from terrorism, such as Afghan. All we can do is give a heart condolences and give the support someone need. But I tell you what, sometimes you think, when's it all going to stop? Cutting down trees for paper, pencils, rolling tobacco paper, cigarettes. We're usually cutting all these trees down for. You think, when's it all going to stop? When is it all going to stop? The fish catching the fisheries. You've got the French fishing our waters. We've got rights with our aqua politics. We've got piracy at sea, people coming to our land, nicking our stuff and then going off. Somalians are well known for that. When's it all going to stop? So when's it all going to stop? It's when we can subsidise our own goods with our own people. And that's never going to happen because we rely on globalisation, such as every other country as well. Clothes, food, fruit, you know. We all rely on globalisation. We can't come fascist within the industry, as much as some of you probably think, oh, so annoying. But we can't. We have to live by a day. Anyway, before entering UK roads, think safety, things first. Check your engine oil, your water coolant tank, make sure they're topped up to maximum level. Just do the simple task. Check, is your car taxed, MOT'd, are you insured? Do you have a driving licence? If you've got none of them, or maybe not one of them, you don't enter your vehicle until it's sorted. Do not enter the vehicle under sleep deprivation, under influence of alcohol and narcotics. If you had a night on a source on a Friday night, you wouldn't then go in a car the next day. It takes 24 hours to get your system in a good sleep before you enter your vehicle, putting not only your life at risk, vulnerable people on the road, people crossing the road, even people on a pavement. If you have a serious incident, you're taking a lot of risk. Think, Nigel. Think, Nigel. Make sure you and passengers have seatbelts adjacent to the car seat and babies have adapters adjacent to the car seat as well. Checking for further police instructions, road safety signs, roadworks, make sure no one's emerging from behind the house fencing onto the road. Be vigilant around roadworks for that purpose. When you come to a crossing or two can cross, make sure pedestrian or cyclist is fully across the road before adhering onto the road again. Like I said, check for police actions, further police signs of roadworks. Check for road safety signs. Check your centre mirror, wing mirror before turning, acting in safe, sufficient directional choice, making sure pedestrians or motorcyclists not overtaking on the left or the right hand side of your shoulder. That's where you check your mirror and your left shoulder at a glance as you're turning. Or over your right if you're turning to your right. Always check the opposing shoulder before turning, making sure no one's overtaking. So I want to say thank you ever so much for tuning in today, being observed and both preserved. We are an absolute phenomenal show on Castbox, podcast, YouTube. We are absolute populism within the UK. It's not just populism in my constituency. I've been all over the globe in the UK. I was in Greater London the year before last. I'm back in Essex constituency right now. You never know. I could be moving, but the show will still keep going. Absolutely. Anyway, ladies and gents, on the M25 today, we have an incident. At 7 a.m. this morning, traffic signal failure on the A12 at Governs Lane at 7 o'clock this morning. There you go. Just before Dartford, Maldives, we've got M25 traffic problem. Report of a traffic problem on M25 clockwise at junction 30, A282, Lakeside, Purfleet towards the QE2 bridge. Nothing obvious on sensors. This is reported at 10:46 a.m. We look down at Maidstone, Kent. I've got friends down that area, so we're going to give that a little shout out today. It's southeast of England. B2010 Lower Road accident. Traffic Copenwell accident on B2010 Lower Road near Dean Street. Traffic is Copenwell. 10:26 a.m. first reported. Oh my absolute goodness. Now we're going to go to west of London, Slough on the outskirts. M4 lanes closed, stalled traffic. Vehicle is stalled on M4 eastbound between Junction 6, A355. Royal Windsor Way, Slough, Windsor at Junction 584 London Road. Langley, traffic is Copenwell. Lane of 1 of 3 is closed. Reports at 10:34 a.m. So you're talking just under an hour ago, just over an hour ago. Near Braintree, have an incident. Oh my absolute goodness. A B1008, B1008, accident traffic coping well. Reports of accident on the B1008 at Wall Chase. Traffic is coping well. 11:24. That's literally minutes ago. Bedford, Greater London, Hertfordshire. A421, one lane closed, slow traffic due to emergency barrier repairs on A421, southbound at A4280. St. Road at 2, A603, Cardington Road, Cardington Cross, lane 1 of 2 is closed. This report at 11 a.m. this morning. Thank you all for tuning in. We're going to have a quick short break. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. I'm going to boo Luke and give us a shout. No, actually, I'm going to give you, before we move on to politics, this is what I'm going to give you. We've got politics, we've got criminology. Oh my goodness. We've got horrific news coming up in the pipeline. If you want to become like me and become a like-minded political influencer, please do jump on board. How much is to sign up to be a political influencer? Become as phenomenal as me. This is probably my fourth, well, I'll probably say about 7 consecutive years, but I was very sporadic to start for the first couple of years because I was professional boxer, in and out of professional boxer. I was doing this sporadically as and when I could. But now this is like I sleep politics, eat politics, and repeat politics in my latter years. So we could say 7 years I've been in and around politics, and the last 4 to 5 years I've been working very, very ethically, phenomenally hard. Sometimes erratically, but yeah, I'm working hard. Ladies and gents, to get part as a, get involved in politics. You want your opinion, your voice heard. Get involved. Get involved with your party politics. What do your family follow? What's your tradition to follow in politics? Mine is Conservative, because the generations of Conservative government. I'm talking past Harold Macmillan, Harold Maurice Macmillan. I'm talking about, long past them. I'm talking years and years. Winston Churchill was my latest family's venture. My granddad was in World War II. Also, Queen Grenadier Guard. Same as my cousin Jonathan, Queen Grenadier Guard also. It's Conservative for me. I'm a Johnson as well. Conservative for me. Absolutely. I do like Lib Dems, but I'm a Conservative. A lot of people think my personality is a bit like a Lib Dem, but I'm a Conservative. I do like James O'Brien. I do like Rachel Johnson. I do like Lib Dems, but I am a Conservative, and I will promote Conservative politics. Yeah, it is what it is. I'm Conservative. Lovely to meet you. I'm not putting other sides down. I'm not being irrational towards anyone. The only person I'm not a great fan of is when they start criticising other politicians, namely Nigel Farage just recently. He's done some ludicrous things in the past. We know he's a toper at the bar. I mean, I don't know, a lot of people worship Nigel Farage in the media. I have no idea why. Why would you worship a toper at the bar? I don't know. It indicates nonsense, it indicates sin, indicates horrific mental behaviour, and he was seen on Twitter yesterday putting down a Prime Minister. So I jumped on the bandwagon of putting him back in his place. I said he's a distilled politician. And what I meant by that is an alcoholic, like a distilled cognac, alcoholic bottled drink. It's just the things he comes out with make me think, what is this guy on? Where's he come from? Metropolitan Lunatic Asylum. Anyway, if you want to get involved with politics, under 26 for Conservative is £5 per year. Standard party membership and all associated benefits is offered to a special £5 rate to those aged under 26. Standard membership is £25 per year. Members play an active role in the party, can attend our annual conference and receive voting rights in party elections after 3 months of membership, all from £25 per year or just £2.09 per month. With our armed forces, it's £15 per year. Standard party membership and all associated benefits is offered at a reduced rate for serving and former members of our armed forces. What does your membership get you? What can you do? You can help the Conservative win elections. All your subscription goes towards our campaigns. Get the latest from Inside Party with regular member updates and exclusive member invites. Choose candidates and vote in leadership elections so you can choose the people you want to represent you. Influence party policy by giving feedback on policy briefs. Take part in our campaign groups, like the Conservative Women's Organisation of Young Conservatives. Meet like-minded people and make a difference to our country. Connect with local Conservatives. As a member, you become part of a local association, support local campaigns and attend social events with members just like you. You can come to a conference, join our MPs, councillors and activists in the biggest event of Conservatives Canada. Stand for election. Members have the opportunity to stand for election as Conservatives. So if you decide that you want to take part in a democracy, you can. I mean, maybe you want to become as a councillor, maybe you want to become a politician. I mean, what ideas can you bring to the party? I mean, you can see what I do. This is what I do every day, giving comments and trying to minimise knife crime. Are people supporting it? Is my voice getting heard? My voice and opinion are getting heard, but no one's supporting it. That is the trouble. And without you getting properly elected, you can't make much of a difference. You need people to believe in you to achieve. But no one wants, you don't want your brother or sister to get stabbed, do you? So why don't we all hand their knives in? It's, when can we put a stop to it? I can't say to you, right, everyone that's listening in, we're going to spread the word. We're going to all hand all our sharp knives in so children can't get hold of them and no accidents can happen down the road. And tell all the shops, supermarkets to stop selling them on shop floors. It's as simple as that. Spread the word, gets done, but it's got to be said through Parliament, unfortunately. But we need people to start signing petitions on this. I did set up a petition on this, which you will find on the petition thing, I believe. Well, I would post it up. I don't know where it is at the moment. I did have it somewhere, in an email somewhere. But just going to share the news. Stay with me, ladies and gents. I really am overwhelmed. You guys tuning in this afternoon. I was saying this morning, afternoon.
For the next leg of his latest international tour.
He's in the United Kingdom for the COP26 climate conference today. The president will deliver a statement as the summit kicks off this morning. He'll also attend several meetings with a range of world leaders, from UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson to the president of Indonesia. NBC News correspondent Josh Letterman joins us now from Edinburgh. He covers the Biden administration's climate policy. So, Josh, the president is in Scotland now. First up, what's on his agenda today?
Hey, Joe. Yeah, we actually just watched in the skies right behind me as Air Force One descended on Scotland. I was kind of surprised you could see it all the way from here. But now President Biden in Scotland, where he hopes to hit the ground running today with a busy day of meetings with the head of the UK, the British Prime Minister, as well as the Secretary General. And then Biden will give his major remarks to the COP26 summit, where he is really aiming to show that the U.S. is back in the game on climate change in a serious way after former President Trump yanks the U.S. out of the Paris climate deal. Biden facing some skepticism given that he has yet to deliver on that major sweeping climate legislation that is part of that spending package still being debated in Congress. But Biden hoping that this will be the opportunity for world leaders to come together, keep alive that hope of limiting climate change to 1.5 degrees Celsius.
Josh, let's talk about a major domestic issue. Yesterday, President Biden announced several moves that could try and help ease supply chain issues, which are plaguing the U.S. right now. Can you tell us more about what he said?
Yeah, we heard from Biden about this last night, and his message was, look, normally Americans wouldn't even have to be thinking about things like supply chains, but given the COVID-19 crisis, this is something that is disrupting parts of our daily life. And he says government has a role in trying to address that. So President Biden announcing that there will be new federal funding to try to really speed up some of the issues they're having at the ports, try to cut red tape in particular in partnership with our Asian allies. And then Biden also saying that the government will be able to improve the way it uses the national defense stockpiles to make sure that critical minerals and other supplies are available when we face these kinds of shortfalls.
Josh, one more thing we want to ask you about. Last week, it was announced at the last minute that White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki would not be going with the president to Europe. Now we've learned why. Turns out she had family that had tested positive for coronavirus. Now she has tested positive.
Right.
couple questions here. How's she doing, and how much contact did she have with the president and other White House staff?
Well, Jen Psaki says she's feeling okay. She has only mild symptoms, and that she last saw the president on Wednesday, where they were more than 6 feet apart, outdoors, wearing masks. Since then, she tested negative 4 days in a row before she then tested positive, and so not a ton of concern about the president. And in fact, we just heard from a White House spokeswoman aboard Air Force One that President Biden took a COVID test yesterday in preparation for entering the United Kingdom today. President Biden also tested negative, Joe.
All right. Busy morning, Josh Letterman. Thanks so much.
Now, President Biden is just one of the more than 100 world leaders attending COP26, the UN climate change conference in Glasgow. The summit is being billed as the world's last best chance to curb the climate crisis. As scientists warn, time is running out. In August, a sobering UN report found that some changes, such as rising sea levels and warming oceans, are already irreversible. And the report said it's unequivocal that human influence has warmed the atmosphere, ocean, and land. The UN Secretary General called the findings a code red for humanity. Joining us now to discuss this is Dr. Bradley Horton. He's a climate scientist and Lamont Research Professor at Columbia University. Dr. Horton, good morning. Thank you so much for being with us, especially to discuss something so important today. So scientists have been sounding the alarm on climate change for years. Now, that UN report we just showed said it's basically affecting every region of the planet. What do you hope to see come out of this conference? What could actually happen here that might make a difference?
Yeah, well, we need to rapidly reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. We need to get globally to a 50% reduction within the next decade and to what's called net zero, which means that we're not emitting any more greenhouse gases to the atmosphere than are being taken out. So that needs to happen by 2050. Very ambitious, but that's what it's going to take to not blow through that 1.5 degrees Celsius warming target. It may, as you alluded to, just be too difficult to adapt to, especially for the world's most vulnerable.
And now, Dr. Horton, some climate scientists are saying that we're really running out of time to avert the most devastating impacts of global warming. Tell us, what exactly does this look like, and explain to us why the situation is so dire right now.
Yeah, so we can split this up into the extreme weather events that we're seeing with an increasing frequency, and then also the societal impacts. So in terms of the extreme weather events, we're talking about far more fires than we saw in the past. We're talking about record-breaking heat waves, record-breaking combinations of heat and humidity that a person really can't survive or function outdoors in for long periods of time. We're also talking about more heavy rain events and more coastal flooding, as higher sea levels mean that whenever a storm comes along, it piles up water in our cities and our populous coastal areas. And when we start to talk about the impacts, one of the things we've really learned in recent years is that our systems are more vulnerable to a little bit of warming, and more extreme events than we thought. So crop yields really starting to drop during heat waves, more people migrating, just more vulnerability across the board, and the potential for real economic displacement, shifts in value fast, just with the amount of changes in climate change we've seen so far.
And Dr. Horton, I want to ask you a little bit about climate injustice. So richer countries generally contribute more to rising emissions, but developing nations are then disproportionately affected by flooding and these other extreme weather events that you've mentioned. Climate activist Greta Thunberg, who's also attending this summit, spoke about this in a recent interview. First, let's play some of what she said, and I'll ask you a question on the other side.
It's not fair when, for example, one country sends lots and lots and lots of delegates, and then another country is very underrepresented. And as long as we continue to ignore this in the very negotiations, that of course will not have a successful outcome.
How do we begin to solve this massive issue of climate injustice? Where do we start? And what do people here in the US who maybe aren't seeing an impact right in their front yard need to know about what's happening to others around the world?
Yeah, so as you said, it starts with the history, right? It's the countries that in the past, like the US, have emitted so many greenhouse gases that last in the atmosphere for 100 years or so. So they're still causing sea levels to rise, those emissions from the past. And per capita, developed countries that have become rich off of greenhouse gases continue to emit more gases per person than developing countries do. But as you also alluded to, it's not just the emissions side of the story. When we look at vulnerability to those types of storms that I talked about before, it's the vulnerable countries that tend to suffer the most, and to be a lot of the hotter places that are experiencing those extreme heat waves with greater frequency, but also less prepared for any extreme weather that you get, less financing for seawalls, for example, and less institutional capacity. So whether you're talking about developing countries or within the U.S., those vulnerable communities that have experienced injustice in the past, it's a focusing effort that's critically important.
Thank you for bearing with me for a couple of minutes here, ladies and gents. I was just sharing the instance on my Twitter page. Just want to say I'm overwhelmed for all the listeners. Trying to turn United Kingdom organic green, especially my constituency. I'm trying to do everything I can. We got volunteers going out cleaning the environment in our parks, in our local shopping centres. I don't know what your areas are like. We're trying to keep, remain our site nice and tidy. A tidy site is a happy site, absolutely. I think they should ban festivals. Festival is one of the worst polluted things, isn't there? People throwing weed, beer, alcohol, bottles, rubbish. I mean, they're one of the things that they just need to put a stop to, don't they? Making it harder work for the volunteers the next day, go around cleaning up your mess. Sick, vomit, urination, human feces, whatever else that's been dumped behind after a festival. It's horrific. That's all I can say. I don't drink, so I don't take narcotics. That's not my social circle of people. I go to church every Sunday. Owen Paterson. Tory MPs, allies seek to save him from sleaze punishment. I was going to start talking about non-essential shopping trips to save carbon emissions, which is very, very thoughtful of people to start using their, start thinking of their children in the future. Why don't you just get a bus into town rather than driving into town? Non-essential shopping trips. You don't need to take your vehicle. Do not need to take a vehicle. If you're picking up a big TV, get it delivered. Order it online and get it delivered. That's what I'm saying. Non-essential shopping trips need to be banned. You should get fined. They should put tax fines on it and make sure you get public transport or don't go to town. Simple as that. Allies of the Tory MP who broke standard rules are trying to prevent him from being suspended from Parliament. Owen Paterson was found to have used his position as an MP to benefit two firms that paid him paid as a consultant. He said the probe into his conduct was unfair, and Tory MPs will try later to have his 30-day suspension put on hold while the rules are rewritten. Labour says it is a shocking attempt to scrap the independent anti-sleaze system designed to keep MPs in check, but in a possible hint that the government backed the Tory MPs opposing Mr Paterson's punishment, Transport Secretary Grant Shapps said that the current system was damaging public confidence and may require fixing. MPs will vote later on Wednesday on whether to endorse a recommendation from the Common Standards Committee and Mr Paterson be suspended for sitting 30 days. A suspension of this length could automatically trigger a recall petition, which could lead to a by-election if 10% of eligible voters in his constituency sign it. However, Mr Paterson's supporters, led by the fellow Tory MP and former Commons leader Andrea Leadsom, will try to overturn the recommendation. They will try to push an amendment that will instead see a new committee set up to consider changes to the process for investigating MPs. Conservative MP Sir Bernard Jenkins, who is a member of the Standards Committee but stepping back from it while it dealt with his friend Mr Paterson's case, told the BBC Radio 4 Today programme, "We currently have a very unsatisfactory process that requires the whole House of Commons, all 650 members, to give a final opinion on whether this case has been handled properly." That's a hopeless system and looks terrible, he added. I don't want to be here, and there is no alternative. For Labour Shadow Home Office Minister Jess Phillips says there was not a scrap of morality or principle in the position of Tory backbenchers, adding, "It's mates rates, and by God are some good rates of pay." And the party's shadow Commons leader Fangham Debonair said, "It is shocking that the government ministers are being encouraged to vote for a return to the worst of the 1990s Tory sleaze culture. Commons Speaker Sir Lindsay Hoyle will decide whether the amendment is voted on. Votes to suspend MPs are normally approved without incident, and proposals to amend any sanction are historically rare." The committee's recommendation followed an investigation by Parliament Standards Commissioner Catherine Stone, a post created in 1995 to deal with the Cash for Questions scandal, which saw Tory MPs paid to ask certain questions in Parliament. The committee report said Ms Patterson had breached Commons lobbying rules in making approaches to the Food Standards Agency and Department for International Development ministers about Randox and Lynn's Country Foods, which employed him as a paid consultant. It noted there was no immediate financial benefit secured by the two firms, but that Mr Patterson's approaches could clearly have conferred significant benefits on Randox and Lynn in the long term, and even if the short term secured meetings that would not have been available without Mr Patterson's involvement. Mr Patterson, a former cabinet minister, has denied any wrongdoing and argued his approach were within the rules because he was seeking to alert ministers to defects in safety regulations. This argument was rejected by the Commissioner, who said this only applied to the case of initial approach in the first meeting. However, Mr Patterson has hit back against the findings and the system under which he was investigating, particularly the lack of the right appeal and the inability to call witnesses in his defence. He's speaking after the Watchdog's report was published last week. He added, "I'm not guilty, and a fair process would exonerate me." He said the process was a major contributory factor in the death of his wife Rose, who took her own life last year. In its 175-page report, the Cross-Parties Committee considered his criticisms of the investigation and rejected them. It also said it had taken the circumstance of his wife's death into account when considering Mr Patterson's conduct. The COP26, ladies and gents. COP26. Had a meeting about this just the other day. COP26, Boris Johnson apologises to ministers over wheelchair access. I mean, this how right is usually up on things when it comes to looking after disabled people. Boris Johnson apologises to Israeli Minister Catherine O'Hara for not gaining access to the COP26 in her wheelchair on Monday. Boris Johnson has apologised to the Israeli Minister who was unable to access the COP26 in her wheelchair. Catherine O'Hara was forced to return to a hotel 50 miles away on Monday after waiting outside for 2 hours. The UK Prime Minister told her he was sorry for the confusion. When the Energy Minister joined a meeting with him and Israel's PM, Naftali Bennett, Mr Bennett thanked his British counterpart for his quick intervention on his unfortunate incident. As he called the learning opportunity for all of us in the importance of accessibility for all, a statement backed by Mr Johnson. Miss O'Hara, who has muscular dystrophy, told BBC News she's gone into the climate summit on Tuesday very easily and it's quite a different experience. But she said Monday the incident had been a good experience to make sure the next UN conference will be accessible. The ministers added, "We can talk about accessibility and the rights of people with disabilities, but in their life we need to implement all the conventions and all the regulations." And that was an experience that showed that we need to pay attention to all the details everywhere. I'm sure it will be different in the future. Earlier, the UK's Environment Secretary, George Eustice, said the incident involving Miss O'Hara was deeply regrettable and that the UK government had apologised. But disability charity Scope said it was inexcusable and the organisers should have seen this coming. Mr Johnson's apology has coincided with Purple Tuesday, an awareness day set up to make organisations improve the experience of their disabled customers. Mr. Eustace appeared to blame the Israel delegation for the fact Miss El-Hawa could not get to the venue, telling BBC Radio 4's programme what would normally happen in a situation is that Israel would have communicated that it had particularly need for her minister. There was obviously something that went wrong in that instance, and they weren't aware of that, so they hadn't made the right provisions at the particular entrance she was coming to, he added. He added, I know that most of the entrance there is wheelchair access there. It was because she was obviously coming to entrance, and that did have that provision. But a spokesperson from the Israeli embassy in London said the country's delegation to the Mr. Eustace gracious of responses for the COP26 host to blame the guest. On Monday, Miss El-Hawa told Israel's Channel 12 that she could not get onto the grounds of the conference because their only options were to either walk or take a shuttle that was not suitable for a wheelchair. Her office told the Times of Israel she waited outside the venue, Glasgow, for 2 hours, and she was eventually forced to return from the hotel in Scottish capital Edinburgh, 80 kilometres, 50 miles away. On Monday, she tweeted that it was sad. The UN does not provide accessibility to its events. An official in Israeli Prime Minister Nathaniel Bennett's delegation said they had formally complained to organisers. A genuine mistake. Reacting to the incident, Alison Kerry of Scope said, it's inexcusable that the organisers of COP26 haven't made all their venues accessible for disabled people. No one should be excluded from participating in an event that is addressing one of the biggest issues of our time. She added the organisers should have seen this coming. With 1 in 5 of us being disabled, it should come as no surprise that the venues hosting tens of thousands of delegates will need to make a significant number of reasonable adjustments. Its high time accessibility is built in from the start and not afterthought. The organisers of COP26 told the BBC that the main venue was fully wheelchair accessible, while temporary structures built around it had already undergone accessibility checks and were fully compliant. The COP26 spokesman said this was a genuine mistake and we have apologised to Mr. El-Hawa. We look forward to our attendance at the COP26 today. We remain committed to an exclusive event accessible to all. The venue was designed to facilitate that. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. We've still got more to come through. I just want to say thank you ever so much for joining us today. We've still got 20 minutes of the show left. Thank you ever so much. And listen to what Boris Johnson said at this conference here. COP26 in Glasgow.
Hello, how do you do? How are you? Nice to see you. I gathered there was some confusion with the arrangements yesterday. I'm very, very sorry about that. Minister Karim and she's our energy minister. I'm doing a remarkable job. It's very unfortunate incident. Yeah, I'm so sorry. Now we're all here together. Great. My national security advisor.
Israel Minister Karim El-Hawa, she was a bit distressed as she couldn't get into the COP26 meeting. The conference wasn't accessible for her wheelchair access. It's unheard of in the United Kingdom. Some places obviously so deprived they can't get these facilities, but it's very unheard of in the UK. And there you go, it's happened in Glasgow. Police officer from Colchester to enter pleas over images of the scene where sisters were killed. 2 PCs will appear in the Old Bailey on Tuesday, November the 2nd. 2 Metropolitan police officers accused of sharing images of the bodies of 2 murdered sisters on WhatsApp are due to enter their pleas. PC Dennis Jaffa, 47, from Hornchurch, and PC Jamie Lewis, 33, from Colchester, are due to appear in Old Bailey today. Charged with committing misconduct in the public office between June the 7th and 23rd last year. Officers have been assigned to protect this scene after sisters Bira Henry, 46, and Nicole Smallman, 27, were found dead in some bushes in Fryent Country Park in Wembley, North London. It is alleged that they took non-official and inappropriate photographs of the crime scene before sharing the images on WhatsApp. As part of a criminal investigation by the Independent Office of Police Conduct, IOPC watchdog, 2 men were arrested and later charged. The charge was faced states, and without authorization, he entered the crime scene he had been assigned to protect, sending information about his attendance at the scene and members of the public via WhatsApp, taking photographs of the crime scene. The pair, attached to the Met's North East Command Unit, were both suspended from duty following their arrest in June 22nd last year. They have got a protocol to go to and to protect the rights of people's confidentiality, even for the vulnerable families that lost loved ones. Both men are on unconditional bail. They are due to appear before Judge Mark Lucroft, QC, at 9:30 a.m. We just add that guy that's, caused, well, to me, a men's rehabilitation, drilling someone 5 centimetres in the head. That was only just talking about that just a couple of days ago. I cannot believe that is not attempted murder. That was shocking to read. I am shocked that they got a slap in the wrist. High low among English towns, most risk at far-right extremism post-COVID. Study was carried out by anti-racism group Hope Not Hate. Harlow is at risk of becoming a hotspot for far-right extremism, a new report has warned. Hope Not Hate, an anti-racism group, has published a report revealing how towns across England and Wales have been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic and their financial repercussions. According to surveys of the group on an analysis of local authorities, there were 52 areas where community tensions could be stoked. Further 16 places were shown by particular risk, including Harlow and Essex. The report says this is because the area had taken longer to recover from financial crisis in the past, and it had been hit hard by the COVID pandemic. And that has a link to the right far extremism, as the report said. Our research has constantly found that communities with a great anxiety about immigration and multiculturalism are also ones who have suffered through economic decline, have weak civic, social and economic infrastructure, and feel most distant from power. While picking out the misinformation meant Muslim communities were scapegoated for rising COVID cases following Ed Mubarak. Hope Not Hate said that during economically tough periods, people often look for someone to blame. When people have little hope for their own chance in life, it is much harder for them to show openness and compassion for others, the report says. It said this misinformation often becomes exploited by figures seeking to push anti-Muslim hatred, causing an increase in the far-right activity, homophobia, transphobia, and the conspiracy theories in local communities. Harlow, in particular, was seen as a town facing resilience, challenges, and during the pandemic. Hope Not Hate said this was because Essex town had fewer heritage assets and much deeper, cheaper housing. It added there was an absence of the assets conferring status like a city-state, football club or medieval history. The report said this could be improved by investment in community pubs, libraries and art festivals and other local assets, which could help to build a stronger sense of place. It added, however, its findings do not mean the town will automatically be susceptible to far-right overtures, or even that they are the most vulnerable in the country to coercion issue. But it does mean that these are areas where the impact of COVID-19 is most likely to have enlarged the risks. Hope Not Hate report. There you go, ladies and gents. Are we near the end of the show? We've got one more segment to get through. I am overwhelmed and happy that you guys are here to spend this wonderful day in the propaganda. 2 Essex places named worst places to live by. I live here votes. One place made it up to the top 10. Here we go. 2 Essex here have been ranked as some of the worst places to live in England, according to the public poll. According to online poll I Live Here, which had more than 125,681 votes. Jaywick was 8th on the list. The coastal town Tendring district made it the top 10 as a regular tops the charts of being England's most deprived area. Peterborough took the controversial top spot, with Huddersfield taking the 2nd place and Liverpool in the 3rd. Barking and Dagenham on the Essex border also made it a top 50, as well as it ranked 43rd on the list. However, there's been some signs that Jaywick could move off the list, with the council approving housing projects and receiving millions to revamp the Essex town. Tendring Council plans for 8 new houses to be built in Jaywick last month and was funded for £2 million to build a market complex on the former Sunspot Museum site. Recently, residents have protested about the CPZ zones that have been implemented in the borough, with many claiming they face problems parking their cars in front of their residential properties. Here's a full list of the worst places in England. Number 1 is Peterborough, 2 Huddersfield, 3 Liverpool, 4 Bradford, 5 Hull, 6 Wakefield, 7 Luton. Luton is a bad place. 8 Jaywick, 9 Torquay, 10 Halifax, 11 Doncaster, 12 Keighley, 13 Castleford, 14 Barnsley, 15 Blackpool, 16 Grimsby, Oldham, Aylesbury, New Abbott, Wigan, and it goes on all up to 50, but I'm not going to do the 50 first. That is enough from Proclamation News and Gatherence this afternoon. It's been a wonderful, wonderful afternoon show. Obviously, you can find us on Spotify.